The American Film Institute kicked off their documentary film festival in Washington, D.C. this week, known as AFI Docs. It features 5 days of international documentaries.
But one film stays close to home, featuring a family living right here in the nation's capital. The documentary was shot over 2 decades by a boy who grew up 17 blocks from the Capitol. It highlights the sometimes devastating events that have plagued the neighborhood. Here to talk about the film, its impact, is director Davy Rothbart. He's also a journalist and author. He's joined by Heidi Nell, principal and head of the Impact Entertainment at Raven Group. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be here.
Tell us a little bit about why you decided to make this film.
Sure. In 1999, I moved to D.C. and I met 2 boys at a basketball court in Southeast, Smurf and his little brother Emmanuel, and we became friends. As their mom likes to say, the family adopted me, you know. And I just started spending every day with them. I was interested in learning filmmaking, and the kids just took to it. They were like age 9 and 15, and before I knew it, you know, they'd be interviewing me, I'd be interviewing them. We'd walk around the neighborhood interviewing people, and we've just continued filming together for the last 20 years.
Wow.
So, you know, they lived just 17 blocks behind the U.S. Capitol at the time, and yet it was known as one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the country. And so to see their journey over 20 years, it's a love story about a family.
Yeah.
It's a story of courage and resilience, and it's been quite a journey. So.
Heidi, you work with a lot of filmmakers. What was it about this particular film that stood out to you?
I mean, so many things, but first and foremost is just the universal themes in this story, right? It's themes of family and love, and I think in a time that the country feels so divided, when we can latch on to those themes that we all experience in our day-to-day lives with our own families, it kind of unites us in a way. And you know, storytelling in film has the power to unite in a really impressive way, and I think we all believe that, and that's part of why we created the AFI Docs Impact Lab for filmmakers who have these films that they want to make greater social impact with, but being able to bring them to Washington, D.C. for 2 days before the festival and do a really intensive training on best practices in grassroots communications and advocacy so they can connect the dots with great storytelling and then impactful outcomes.
And the Sanford family, who I've been working on this film with for 20 years, you know, their family has been touched by gun violence, and then one of their family members was killed in a shooting here in D.C. 10 years ago. And so the family and I have, you know, hoped that by sharing their story, the film could be a tool for change. And coming to the AFI Impact Labs has been so incredible because we are getting the tools and the skills to be able to take this really incredible story, but take it out into the world and share it and actually use it to make a difference.
I mean, the film, it's their home videos, right?
Yeah,
Stitched together
they shot
over
much of the film themselves.
Years and years, and so it's very raw, right?
Yes.
Like, I mean, it's unvarnished. It doesn't always show like the happiest, most, you know, joyful, happy gloss on things. What was the family's comfort level with sharing some of these really difficult, really intimate moments? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, the Sanford family is incredible because they understood that by sharing their story in a raw way, it would be intense for people, you know. But they had seen other families suffer, you know, losing family members to gun violence, and they knew what they were going to have to walk through in those days and weeks following. And they said, we should film all of this because it's such a big problem, not just in D.C., of course, but around the country, and yet it sometimes just seems like a number, you know. But when you actually, you know, they knew that we had footage of their family dating back, you know, since 1999, and Cheryl, the mother, she said, you know, people will finally connect the dots here. You know, like they can walk in our shoes through some of this stuff and feel that loss that we felt.
Well, so in many ways, the story is also the story of Washington, D.C. You've lived here for 20 years. So how is it that the film, you think, fits into a broader narrative about what's happening in cities across the country?
Totally. Well, I think what you find in cities all around the country, and I live in L.A. now, but really in every city, I lived in Chicago, any city you go to, you know, the idea that, and some people who I've met in the Impact Lab this week, some of these other great filmmakers, you know, they've said it's kind of mind-blowing that 17 blocks behind the U.S. Capitol building. You know, we were there yesterday as part of the Impact Lab talking to congressmen and senators, and the idea that 17 blocks behind that could be a neighborhood that's so dangerous. That's, you know, that's one of the most, you know, it was known as one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the country. And you find that in cities all around the country, where there's a murder inequality, is a term that a Chicago sociologist used that describes, how a city can be so safe in one block and 17 blocks away can be so dangerous.
And even that term sounds so clinical.
Yeah, it's true. That doesn't even express, but basically, if this film, if 17 blocks can move people to action, can make people realize, like, wait a second, something has to change, something that's not right. Like, no kid, and you fall in love with these kids in the film because they're sweet, wonderful, curious kids.
Right.
And no kid should have to live surrounded by danger.
Right.
I think that's really the sort of power of the film, but also this idea of, films changing hearts and minds, but also policy. And it's not just a nice idea, it's based in science. And narrative transportation is a scientific theory that when people are watching a really powerful or engaging story, they leave their own shoes, they transport into the shoes of the characters of this family, in the case of 17 Blocks, and come back into their own circumstances with a sort of shifted perception or perspective of life and what life must be like. And for us as strategists, we're thinking about, okay, in those peak moments of emotion, whether it's anger or inspiration or fear, whatever it is, if we can connect audiences to an action that taken collectively among millions of viewers, that action and that collective action can have lasting impact over time.
Well, and we've seen that work. I mean, I know, Heidi, you did a lot of work on sexual violence in the military, and that whole conversation was really sparked by film. So we have examples through history of where this has really mattered.
And to your question, I mean, look, this does happen in cities all around the country, but this is DC. And here are the places where policy decisions are made. And that's why we want staffers on the Hill and
if it was going to be visible anywhere, you would think it would be here.
You would think it would be, but that's why we want people here in DC to see the film, because here are the people that can change policy.
What's been the response so far?
I mean, it's been incredible. People watch the film and they come out. I mean, there's laughter, there's a lot of tears. People I think, are rocked by the film. And
what's that like for you to see that happen?
It's surreal because for the last 20 years, this is my family, and we've been so tight. But it's just now for the rest of the world to start to meet this family and to hear incredible people talking about Smurf and Denise and Cheryl, the people that are so close to my heart. That has been really incredible. But the most thrilling part is knowing that their story can make a difference.
And it premieres in DC tonight.
Yes, 6:30 tonight. We're going to be as part of the AFI Doc Festival, 6:30 tonight at E Street Cinema. And then tomorrow we have a screening at AFI Silver in Silver Spring at 3:30 in the afternoon. And then, of course, over the months to come, we'll have our wider release. So we hope people can come out and see it.
And we don't want to do spoilers, but family is doing pretty well if people watch the film.
The family's doing great, and they will all be here at the screenings. That's one of the special things about a festival like this, is that the family will be there in person. All the subjects of all these, some of the subjects of some of these other documentaries will be there, but tonight and tomorrow will be special.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us, guys.
Guys, congrats.
Thank you.
Next up on Rising, what is the impact of Medicare for All on corporate America, and how can innovation improve policy?
Plus, when you extract electability from 2020 polling, a surprise figure emerges as the top Democratic primary. In the top Democratic primary field, Team Rising will weigh in on that and Joe Biden's latest gaffe. All this when Rising continues.